Hello, Namaskar. Welcome to my pod, the CAA Show. CAA, as all of you know, is Conversations and Analysis. My name is Juggi Bhasin. To become a subscriber, all you have to do is to press a red button on your screen, and subscription is, of course, completely free. Would also really appreciate if you could like this video and share this video with your friends. All right, the left in this country. The left was a potent force in this country, no doubt about it, at one point in time. It, to a certain extent, shaped the political and the economic destiny of this country. But that might not be true any longer. Some say that the heyday of the left has passed. Some even say that it has been relegated to being a footnote in history. Its situation today is like that of a prize fighter which finds itself on the ropes, putting up its hand to ward off the blows coming at it. And to talk about all this is a very interesting, a very well known personality, a personality who is a crusader, I would say, of social justice, a social and a peace activist, also a corporate entity, but above all, she is a very telegenic TV personality, somebody with whom all of you are familiar. Welcome to the show, Saira Shah Halim. Saira, can you hear me?
Thanks, Jackie. Thanks for having me on your show. Yes, Jackie, thank you so much for having me on your show, CAA, and I look forward to yet another engaging session with you.
Okay. A disclaimer in the beginning, Sarah and I are good friends, but I have to say my political ideology is very different from Sarah's, but that does not stop from both of us from agreeing to disagree. And we are still friends despite it. And therefore, I will try and bring an element of neutrality, of objectivity, hopefully, in this podcast. So here goes, Sarah. Let's get the ball rolling and let's get down into asking you about the left. And you would be wondering that why this occasion for asking about the left in the country, and the occasion is this: Sarah's new book. Here, has been released. I'm reading through this book, and I can tell you one thing about this book. It's been very, very interestingly and racily written. It's a great read. I've read about one third of the book. There are a lot of interesting things which have already come up, and I'm going to talk about all those things and ask a lot of questions from Saira today. So, Saira, I'll get straight to the pertinent things in this book, and I'm going to read to you a small 3 or 4 lines from page 7 of your book, where you say, this is quoting you only, Saira. Let's face it, communists
Right.
aren't exactly everyone's idea of lively brunch buddies with their knack of revolutions, whether
Uh,
over a hat or a teacup. They have earned a reputation as buzzkills, partly deserved but mostly blown out of proportion, maybe even by the left itself. For decades, the left has been the world's favorite villain. Saira, you have written this, I haven't written this, and I have to say, what objectivity and kudos to you for this fantastic, your writing delivery and style. But on a more serious note, the initial line of the book, the battle of the left to win the Indian mind. The question is this, Saira, it's a battle, isn't it? Some would even say a losing battle. Give us your initial comments about this.
Okay, so firstly, thank you, Jaggi, for having me on the show. And I've been following your podcast, and I've been part of it, in the past. And I think you do the deliberation so wonderfully, and you actually bring the context to light. So here we are talking about relic of the past, whether the left is a relic of the past or is still relevant for today. I just felt that there was a gnawing need, on some literature on the left, which is, sadly not there in the mainstream bookstores or at the airports and at the Lit Fest. And over time, I felt that the space is being, occupied by the right wing, across the academic, infrastructure, in the institutions, in the educational systems, and also, where the left was part of a certain intelligence. Yeah, they kind of control the intelligence of the country. I felt that somehow was being corroded. So my idea was to bring the left back to where it belongs in academics, and also not just the academics or intelligentsia, in the hands of any avid reader, any history buff. So I'm glad that even though politically we're not exactly aligned, but I do read, probably say a friend of mine has launched a book on Savarkar, right? Vikram Sampat. I went and bought the book just for curiosity and just for interest, and I gave him my feedback as well. I attended the book launch. So I've not written the book just for leftists or
Yeah,
people kind of who believe in the ideology. The idea was to write a book for people like you, for people like everybody who would want to know a little bit more. And also, it was addressing the elephant in the room, because we keep hearing a lot of libel, regarding Marxism. Oh, you guys go to China, or you go to Pakistan, or you're a Maoist, or you're an Naxal, and all that. So it was like breaking down this concept, like who is a Naxal or who is a ultra left. Like, we do have an ultra right lobby, right? So we also have an ultra left lobby. So it
correct.
was to break down very hard concepts, because people generally say that Marxist concepts are very hard to comprehend. So it was to basically break down those concepts and make it easy for readers. That was the whole, point of writing the book.
Absolutely. And for our viewers, I must tell you, because Saira addressed the elephant in the room. I know a little bit personally. It's been ages since I've been to Kolkata, of course. But she's such a fun person. She is such an articulate person. Not the idea of this. You're right, Saira. You addressed the elephant in the room. The idea of the leftists is, there used to be this magazine called Seminar, if you remember, Saira. And the whole idea of the left being in these old dusty rooms, seminar के एक magazine पड़ी हुई है और वहां पर लोग people
Yeah.
with big spectacles ऊपर उसको देख रहे हैं. So the concept is that the imagery of the left is still that. But anyway, but Saira is there in front of you, and you can see that what a telegenic personality she is. So Saira, what we'll do is I'll ask you a few questions, and I'm not going to be pedantic. We're going to make this a more of an interesting and a fun kind of an interview. Let's take a little bit peek at the from the time when the left actually came into force in this country. I'm going to ask you a few questions about that and what's the present state of affairs of the left. And therefore, I'm going to actually read out as again a small passage from your book only. This is from page 15 and 16, which I marked, which is a very interesting passage, I thought, which to my mind is the nub of the problem with the left, really. And quickly, I'll read through these three lines. The title is Stalin Ki Aulad. Should we stick to the original Marxist Leninist blueprint or evolve and improve it? It's a pressing debate, but first let's clarify. Are we transitioning from a Stalinist interpretation of socialism to the scientific socialism envisioned by Marx, Engels, and Lenin? That's the core question. Now, to my mind, this is a very important statement of fact which you have made, Saira, because that to me is the nub of the problem. Marxism, Leninism by itself is an economic theory, really. And at some point in time, it found huge traction all over the world. But then it devolved or mutated into Stalinism. Now, what is Stalinism is we all know what Stalin was all about. And some of the proponents of Stalinism, one name which you give in the beginning, and you're an admirer of this person, Che Guevara. Okay, now Che Guevara
Oh, big time. Yeah.
is a man everybody knows. He has this very romantic looking hat and everything. But there's another side to Che Guevara. He was a revolutionary, of course, in South America. But the other stories, if they are true, is also pretty horrifying, that he used to line up people, literally shoot them, in a line. Che Guevara, Ceausescu, Enver, Hoxha. Now, these are not exactly the kind of names people get comfortable with. How do you explain this problem of the left, that Marxism, Leninism actually finds heroes in these kind of characters? Why not normal people,
Okay.
people like you, for instance? Why
Okay.
these kind of characters?
So, one thing is very clear. Like, whatever we see in India happening today, you look at the extreme poverty, right? the complete divide between the haves and the have-nots, and the complete overtake of capitalism, right? So I'm not here as a hardcore communist trying to, and I've never pretended to be, right?
Hmm, hmm.
At most I'm a left progressive. So here I'm not trying to kind of justify any of the excesses, which Stalin perhaps kind of was a part of, or which Che Guevara was a part of. But we cannot deny, the fact that he was an idealistic man, Che, very romantic man, really idealistic, who left a glorious career in medicine and who was out in the wilds, trying to and taking on, what he called the American, what the Americans, the American whole, capitalist, form of infrastructure. I think that is what is laud worthy. Because here, if you get down to history, everybody today we can say, why is somebody like Savarkar being glorified? He was, what do you call, an RSS stooge. He was kind of, he was part of this whole conspiracy that, kind of killed Mahatma Gandhi. So a lot of historical figures are anyway mired in controversy. The idea
Okay.
is to look at what this stood for,
Okay.
because we cannot compare
Hmm.
today's democracy, today's social democracy structure with how things were back in the day. So today we can even talk about how the Mughals, or say how the Kauravas, rather in Mahabharata, if you see, right, how they kind of fought so many people. And we can even talk about Gautam Buddha, right? He was part of the Kalinga War, and the kind of transformation we saw after Ashoka the Great's transformation when he became Buddha and all that after the Kalinga War. So all these people today, we can debate about them, because it really, we can't compare the 20th century or the 21st century to say what happened back in the day 200 years ago, 100 years ago, or say what happened in the 16th century. Today, when people talk about Mughals, Aurangzeb was, this invader who's a ruthless king, and he was this and he was that. But the point is that we need to understand that every empire in India, every empire, that is, whether it was a Hindu empire, whether it was a Muslim empire, all empires were expansionist empires.
Hmm.
And everybody lived by the sword. I'm not justifying that method to the madness, because here we
Yeah.
believe in a social democracy in India. However, there was no, concept of a nation state. So everybody was trying to protect their kingdoms. So now, when we talk about Che Guevara's time, right? He was part of the Bolivian, that whole
Yeah.
movement, the revolution. And considering that he was from Argentina, and his journey, and taking the CIA to task, taking, what you call the capitalists to task, he had a certain method. And what we are actually glorifying is the idealism is
In
in
Goa.
him.
Hmm.
Whether he lined up people or not, whether he lined up people or not, that we really don't know. Okay. But we would rather like to believe that he stood for a certain ideal, which is like giving up your life for a cause, living a very cushy life. He came from a
Yeah. He
well off
was,
family. He
I
was a
think he was a bit
practicing
like,
doctor.
if I'm
To
not
put
mistaken,
yourself
like
out there.
Charu Mazumdar of West Bengal, who actually was a communist leader and who came from the landlord class, if I'm not mistaken. So the similarities are there. No, Saira, I see. I take your point to that extent where you are saying that we cannot let the present be a hostage to the past. That point is well taken. Though you have actually, there are a lot of things, but
Correct.
those might require separate podcasts completely. Whether you're talking of Savarkar or we are talking of the RSS and all that, those are different issues. But here's the point. I take your point and I understand your point, what you're saying, that look at the left probably with new eyes in a certain sense. That's the point which you are making. But when I look at the left with new eyes, who are the figures which I see today? And you mentioned that in your book in the beginning. You mentioned people like
Yeah.
Alexander Cortez. Again, not a very, very inspiring figure. You mentioned
Maharaj
Bernie
Ansari, he
Alexander
might become
Cortez.
the New York mayor very soon.
Yes, the New York.
Zoran
Yeah.
Mamdani, Greta Thunberg.
Well, Mamdani again, he
Right.
is like shrouded in controversy. There are now reports that a lot of business people are actually leaving New York if Mamdani actually becomes the mayor of New York. Bernie Sanders again,
But
who's a gadfly.
one thing is there.
Yeah.
I do not think these people are anti-industry. The people, I don't know why they have this misconception that the left is against industries. The
Hmm.
left is not against industries of growth.
Yeah.
If you actually look at what Buddhadev Bhattacharya did,
Yeah.
right from the time he took over in 2001 till 2011,
Yeah.
he brought in a lot of industry in West Bengal. You
Absolutely. That
look
I
at
agree
these
with you.
flyovers, you look at these five stars, you
I
look
agree.
at these, what do you call,
Yeah.
Sector 5, you look at the IT company. It was he who brought in. And
Yeah.
he was trying to come to a meeting point between urban development as well as rural development,
Yeah.
which
Yeah.
any previous leaders did not really take that kind of effort. Like Jyoti Basu is known for his land
That's
reforms.
right.
He
That's
put
right.
the panchayat system in place.
Yeah.
However, Buddhadev Bhattacharya really made it a point to understand the growing need for jobs, for fulfilling, youth's aspirations and all of that. So he did industrialize West Bengal to a large extent, and that is what the new left is all about. So I don't think Mamdani is against industry, against growth. What he's very clear is that socialism has to walk hand in hand with the blatant capitalism that we see. We
Okay.
cannot put capitalism
Yeah,
aside.
let's not make it to about Mamdani or about Alexandra Cortez and all these other people, because at the end of the day, let's worry more about what's happening in our own country with the state of the left. That's, I think, more important right now. My only short point being that social justice is, of course, a laudatory, and I'm using your words only. It is a noble laudatory effort, and it should be there. Absolutely has to be there. But the point is, many of these figures don't inspire confidence by their extremist rhetoric, if nothing else. That scares people, ordinary people. How do you address that problem? Because people get scared. अरे यार वो तो अब लेफ्टिस्ट आ जाएंगे तो मतलब एक there is this thing called the property tax or something in the UK, where it came during the socialist era, and those kind of taxations which even Rahul Gandhi is talking about. The left talks about all this, that this kind of taxation system will come if the left comes to power. How do you address those fears of people that if the left comes to power, then all kinds of those things will happen, which
I can understand the fears, but
Saira, we are losing your voice. Hello.
okay, so I feel that the left, when people fear the left, it is pretty grossly misplaced
Okay.
because, we are not going back to shutting down of industries and factories. It doesn't happen today, right? So now you tell me, with this gross disparity today, with, the workers' rights not being met,
Hmm.
and you look at, people like the Ambanis or any other, what do you call, Adanis and all these people, right? And you see the kind of wealth that is thrown at weddings and all that, well, while a huge part of the country still doesn't get even 2 square meals a day. So there is a growing gnawing disparity between the haves and the have nots. Here
Yeah.
we are talking about Antilla, and on the other hand you see slums. So there is a great inequity there. But if you look at the modern communist countries, whether it is, say, Vietnam, or you look at like any other, right?
But even
I
China, for
went to
China for that
Vietnam
matter.
a
Yeah.
couple of years ago,
Yeah.
and the women who were working outside,
Yeah.
uh, China for that matter. But more relatable would be, because not many people have gone to China, but people are traveling to Vietnam. And why I mentioned Vietnam is because it's an excellent model, and I think it is really leading the way, whether it's tourism, whether it's safety of women, whether it is the wage gap, whether it is about workers' rights. Uh, earlier properties in communist countries are very particular that properties used to get confiscated. You
Yeah,
couldn't own more than two cars, and they were basically like
yeah,
following the USSR model. Because if you
yeah.
go to the erstwhile USSR countries, they used to talk about, oh my God, and we were not allowed to practice religion openly, and this happened and that happened. You hear all kinds of stories. I went to Uzbekistan, and people were telling me that back in the day when the Soviets had taken over, and personal properties got confiscated. It went to the state. They couldn't own more
That's right.
than three cars, and there were certain things that were kind of facilitated. But with the modern socialism, it is called communism, but you're following actually modern social democratic principles,
No,
and that
I
is what
take
the
your point.
CPI believes in, and that is
And
why the breakup happened
And
between.
I think the example which you have given of Vietnam is actually a wonderful example, because Vietnam is an exciting place. Everybody wants to go to Vietnam. I completely agree with you. And that begs the question that why are these theories and these practices, all this talk is not coming out from the left? You still have, I'll give you an example. I'm not going to name the gentleman, but you know who I'm going to talk about. CPI, the gentleman who 30 years back used to wear a bush shirt and appear on television or on whatever, black and white. And even today he wears the same bush shirt and all that. It's not inspiring, Saira. My point is, these old fuddy-duddy kind of concept and everything, everybody still thinks that the left is
Do
steeped
I
in the
look like a
past.
fuddy duddy? Do I look like a fuddy
Well,
duddy? I
then
think
why
I'm
don't you
very
take over the
modern.
reins of the party? That's my simple point.
No,
If you
no,
have
no.
modern new ideas,
There's a certain hierarchy, and there's a certain things in place. There's some really aspiring young left leaders who are all over the place, and they're
correct.
working
But
together.
and you
They're
know exactly what I'm
protesting.
talking about, right?
I get it. If you read the a couple of lines in my book, so I said
Yeah.
that is the idea to break that whole imagery of what people have about leftists, wearing bifocals, wearing that khadi and carrying the chola and all that. So I would say I lead a very balanced life. Like I
Yes.
promote good brands. I can be sitting in a nice restaurant and eating good food in a nice club and enjoying a meal with my
Absolutely.
kids, and could be traveling abroad.
Well,
So
as
that is
you're on
the
my
aspect
Facebook,
of
so I
left is.
see the great life you also lead, which is fantastic, which is what I'm saying, that you are a modern communist in a certain sense, which is the way to go. Actually, nothing wrong with that.
Yeah. So yeah, so I would not be audacious enough to call myself a communist as yet, but yeah,
Okay.
I am a left progressive boy.
Okay.
And I would say that if
Yeah.
people,
Let's
yeah, because
let's
now
yeah.
these
Okay, let's
stereotypical
come.
images, yeah, has done a lot of damage. And the idea
I
is to
understand.
kind of just bring the the concepts back, to where it belongs, and to kind of make it very easy, jargon free, and make it easy to for a layperson to
So you're
understand.
looking for,
That is the whole
basically,
point.
jokes apart, then you are looking for what is called a new left in India. That's, I think, really what you are really hinting at or talking about. This is the kind of endeavor in which you are involved, especially you.
So if you see earlier, people
Yeah.
did not wear religion on their sleeve as well. If these the communists of the past, they stayed away from any place. They
Sarah, we'll come
avoided
to the religion
to
part.
see.
We'll go step by step. I'll come to the religion part, but staying on this topic a little bit, I'm going to take you back again to the 60s and the 70s, which I personally feel was the golden period of the left. You know, the time when all the entire world was coming was into that flower generation. It was a revolt against patriarchy, capitalism, the rise of the intellectual movement of thinkers like Sartre, filmmakers like Godard. Even in India, I don't know if you're much younger, of course, but there were films made in India called Mere Apne, Sagina Mahato, which showcase the struggles of the left. But there was a certain element of romanticism, there was a certain element of intellectualism, there was a certain element of aspiration, and more important, Saira, if I remember correctly, the bureaucracy of that time, both the bureaucracy and the foreign services, people were inspired by the left and those practices. I think even today, much of the bureaucracy is inspired by the left. So that was the golden period. What was working at that point in time and what didn't work, is it only the imagery, or is it the policies, or was it something else? And we'll come to that something else a little that you think went wrong, because those 2 decades or something, the left was right on the top.
I agree. See, now we are talking about India at a different time where the parallel cinema of the 70s had taken over our black and white and, colored sets, just about, people were beginning to get color televisions and all that. So it
Yeah,
was a very idealistic film time, when the parallel cinema got made, like films like Par, Do Bhiga Zameen and Mother India, and,
absolutely.
which talked about the landowners and the landless and fighting for your rights. So they were films that you talk about the angry young man, you talk about even Amitabh Bachchan films, 70s, he
Yeah,
kind of encapsulated the the whole rage of a young man who's fighting the system. And
absolutely.
I think he kind of, portrayed a kind of a progressive, not exactly a left, but a progressive voice that was against these very
Absolutely.
fundamentalist ideals that were kind of corroding society and corroding our, our system at large. And I think over time, because of neoliberalism, people are kind of promoting blatant capitalism. That okay, today if you go ahead and buy a fancy bag of three
Yeah,
lakhs, it is cool. People are not talking about sustainability anymore. People are not talking about supporting sustainable brands that is good for the ecosystem, that is good for the environment,
yeah,
because people feel that today is better to kind of endorse a Gucci or a Louis Vuitton or somebody that, or that bag perhaps might just be manufactured in China, and that it's labeled,
yeah.
what you call, with a fancy tag and marketed into the system. And that is how, what you call, these capitalists uh, make use of, countries that have a
Yeah.
growing economy, or rather, don't have a very steadfast economy. They make use
So
of
you're
it.
saying the
You look
climate
at the
change
main.
environment is become an integral part of the new left agenda. That's what you're trying to, if I
Of
can
course.
summarize for you.
Yes,
Okay.
yes, of course.
Right.
Sustainability, the climate change, what do you call, the blatant capitalism. We are not against capitalism per se. We are against the misuse
Misuse of.
of resources of the lesser privileged or the poor nations,
Point taken. Point
and
taken.
misuse of, yeah,
Yeah.
it's against the profiteers.
But again, let's stay a little bit more with a little bit of, I think was another seminal problem with the left. Let talk to me a little bit about that, and that was the tendency of the left. Because even in these decades, in the 60s and the 70s, what the left was really doing was piggyback, banking on the main parties, like this alliance with Indira Gandhi at that time. The left used to play this very critical role where it used to actually decide, help Indira Gandhi shape her entire policies. Maybe they had a small numerical, in terms of seats and all that, but they played a much larger role. But the tendency of the left to piggy bank on political parties, and even today that's happening. Saira, talk to us about it, because forget now, it might not be with the Congress, but it's there with the Samajwadi Party, with the RJD, even with the, the some of the fundamentalist Muslim parties. Why does the left do that? Why can't it establish itself as a separate entity with all the new ideas which you're talking about, but it just has to ride on the coattails of these larger parties?
See, what has happened is, firstly, the left parties broke away, like, right? Because of a fundamental, what you call, difference in the ideologies, because they did not believe in the radical, violent approach. Okay, they believed in the democratic system of running the country, democratic governance, and that is why the ultra left blames it on CPM that you guys are not radical enough or you're not revolutionary enough because you believe in the parliamentary process of running a country. So that is how the ideologies kind of got
Yeah,
separated.
right.
Now coming to why isn't it standing on its own, why is it piggy banking on these political parties, or the Samajwadi Party or Congress and all
Yeah,
that.
yeah,
Let me tell you that whenever there is any kind of autocracy or fascism, or religious extremism. Why do political parties, why do religious groups ultimately look at the left? Because they know that left is the only force in India that can salvage the situation in the country. Today, if they are a random arrest for, and the person is not even, isn't under trial.
Hmm.
He's not been, what do you call, attributed to the crime. But he's
Mhm.
in rotting in jail. The person could be rotting in jail for the last 5 years. Why are they
Mhm.
looking at left? Because they know that left only has that spine or that moral compass to stand up for what is,
Hmm.
stand up against what is going wrong in the country, be it corruption, be it the excesses of, the governments, various governments, be it state, be it central, whatever. So only the left has the moral courage to stand up to the fascist and the aristocrats and the autocrats that we have today,
But
without
isn't
naming any
that the real
political party.
problem?
So
Because then
it
these
will stay
parties use
relevant
the
only
moral
if
compass of
the
the left.
farmers,
I'm
because
assuming there is a moral compass. Don't they use the
yes.
moral compass of the left for their own nefarious means and end? Why does the left do that? You yourself said the
Means
problem is
how?
this.
No, tell me, how is it nefarious for standing up for, if
No,
your
no, 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 no. I'm not talking of
health is
that.
corroded,
I'm
if
saying,
somebody is
supposing.
going to tell you that you are a lesser citizen of a country,
Ah,
and if the left is supporting a good cause, that no citizen of the country can be a lesser citizen, how is that a nefarious activity?
no, no, I'm not
Tell me
talking of
that.
particular
If somebody
points.
says, if there's a
I'm,
discrimination, if there is a
yeah.
law that is,
I'm generally saying that the tendency of these larger
just
parties
because,
is कि लेफ्ट अब हमारे काम आ जाएगा हमको अब ये यहाँ से वोट चाहिए हमको ये चाहिए हमको बाहर दिखाना है एवरीथिंग इज ओके एंड एवरीथिंग यू नो वी आर secularists and all that so bring in the left the point which I'm making is then the left becomes handy at that point in time. That's the point which I'm making in a general sense.
no, I agree with you that a revival is left, not only electorally,
Hmm.
but otherwise organizationally as well. Because right now there are only two forces, which is the left and the right, which is a very well organized right. And then
Yeah.
political parties do kind of reach out to these forces because they know that organizational left is still very organized, be it in the rural area, be it in the urban area, be it in the academic space. And similarly, right wing is trying to do exactly that. They're trying to organize themselves. Earlier, RSS was a banned organization, and it is trying to become a mainstream by kind of appropriating a lot of left leaders. For example, they're celebrating Bhagat Singh's anniversary. Everyone knows that Bhagat Singh was a leftist. He was a clear
Yeah.
Marxist, and
Hmm.
I think you're very clear with the kind of books that he was reading in jail. So you're right when you say that left has to stand up on its own two feet without kind of having these coalitions, which kind of gets messy when elections come around the corner. You're absolutely right. And there needs to be a revival by bringing in fresh perspectives. It shouldn't be that my idea of the left is the sole idea. There
Hmm.
has to be a semblance, and there has to be assimilation of different kind of ideas, and then it becomes a rainbow. And I think that makes
Hmm.
it a broad based left. And that
Correct.
is where I come in. Like, I don't fit into the stereotypical jhola carrying leftist. I come across a very
Yeah.
progressive leftist. And voices, more young voices are needed. People who have average jobs, people who would be riding a decent car, who would be leading a very decent lifestyle. Because end of the day, people don't want to see a person carrying a chola who's out of work but just raising slogans and sloganeering on the streets. They want to see a leftist who has a good job, who
Correct.
does go abroad, who kind of
Yeah. Yeah.
uplifts their morals
Hmm.
and is inspiring to watch. So
That's
people
right.
also want to see the change. You can't just keep looking at these, without naming anybody's, these, fuddy duddies, as you said. They do need aspiring faces.
It's not only the fuddy duddy, Sarah, because I think what you are saying makes a lot of sense to me also. But then at the same time, even the younger lot, you take a like a Kanhaiya Kumar, for instance. I mean, look, at the end of the day, when you look at a Kanhaiya Kumar, he's got JNU written all over him. It's like again, a chip of the old block, the same kind of rhetoric, the same kind of language and everything. What's different? That's my point. Uh, as I said, you come across as a breath of fresh air. I completely agree with you. Maybe the model which you are talking about could be, you have the Labour government right now in UK, and they are not, they are in a certain sense capitalist also in a certain sense. People lead a great life, but they are also very socialistic in their mindset. Why can't it be a midway house instead of these even younger people
That's
like
what we are
Kanayas?
aspiring to do.
Yeah,
We are aspiring to do exactly that. If you look at Buddhadev Bhattacharya's form of governance, he was trying to do exactly that.
yeah.
But what happens is then the rural side starts protesting, because when policies are made and there's certain frameworks in place, there's a land acquisition, so there will always be that class war.
Yeah.
When land acquisition takes place to build a factory or to build a new IT company, there'll always be that peasant and that government battle. When takeovers happen, I think that is a real challenge, is how do you meet
So,
the
yeah.
urban and the rural side, and make both sides happy. That is a real challenge that left faces today.
If I remember correctly, Jyoti Basu's son is an industrialist, correct?
Yeah, yeah.
So that's my short point. This is Jyoti Basu, who was the doyen of the left in the country, really. Um, Talk to me about two other problems. The more serious problem today, which I find with the left, is that why does it link itself with what I call casteist and communal parties? And everybody knows who's these casteist and communal parties. I don't want to name them on the show, but you know what I'm talking about. If the left is democratically progressive, it believes in democratic socialism, as you say. Why, first of all, it should be abjuring religion completely? Why does it align itself with religious parties? That for me is completely, it's
So
befuddling.
the contrary to what people think, it is actually against casteism and communalism. It is fighting the very thing that you're talking about, communal parties and casteist parties, and it supports, secular parties, the parties who kind of brew some kind of communal tension in the country, writing by putting minorities against majorities, or majorities against minorities, or Hindus against Muslims, and vice versa. It's precisely against that. So I think this is the first time I'm hearing that left aligns itself with casteist and communal parties, but it exactly fights the extreme right wing, whichever side of the fence it is from.
No, no, it fights the right
Whether
wing.
it
I'm
is
not, I'm not, I'm not disputing that. But certain other parties in UP, in Bihar, and you know the parties which I'm talking about, they have certain agendas. There is a caste element involved out there. There's the religious element which is involved out there. See, if it pure Marxism in a certain sense is a certain sense, it doesn't believe in religion, it doesn't believe in casteism and all that. And that's the reason why in Bengal, for instance, the entire so many of the top leaders of the left, the initial leaders, they all came from landlord classes, and they left all that, to launch into what is called a kind of a class struggle. That's the first part of it. The second question which I want to ask you is, which comes along with the same problem, is um, violence is always a handmaiden of the left, and I'll tell you why. When the left was in power in Bengal, they obviously had village committees and all that. It went down. Their organization was very, very strong, but then violence was always like, it was like around the corner. You couldn't do anything about it. Uh, why does violence play such a huge role in the left's outreach? And
actually
one
the
last thing.
violence, if you look at it,
Uh, One last thing.
the
The
violence.
Bhadralok culture of Kolkata, for instance, and I find it amazing that the Bhadralok culture of Kolkata sits along with this violent thing which the left carries with it. Maybe not today so much because it's very weakened today, but at a point in time it used to. How do you explain that?
See, I'll tell you what, now it is not about the leftists. It was the Congress that was in power much before the left, came to power in West Bengal. So if you look at the Congress's trajectory in West Bengal, it is riddled with violence, political violence. what is happening today with this whole BJP and the TMC thing? Moment any poll gets over, whether it's a panchayat poll, whether it's a West Bengal assembly poll, whether it's a Lok Sabha election poll, they are election violence, and we see people of the opposition parties being killed, the offices attacked, offices burned down. So it is wrong to say it's a legacy of the left,
Hmm.
because the Congress was way ahead. If you go back in history, it was much in power before the left took over,
Yeah.
right? So there is a tradition of political parties taking on the legacy of the previous regimes. Like Congress was ruling, then the left took over. Right now, Trinamool Congress is in power. Trinamool Congress is following the same pattern of violence and political vengeance. And BJP is trying very hard to kind of make inroads in West Bengal. It is also following a policy of alleged violence across states. So whenever any poll happens, so that is cut across all political lines, whether it was the post, what do you call, Babri Masjid violence, whether it was the, post Indira Gandhi assassination, what do you call, right, that we saw across India. Major political parties have followed that. And I would say that with a lot of confidence, the left is the only political party that ensured that post Indira Gandhi assassination, there was not a single Sikh who was attacked in West Bengal, or there was not a single,
Yeah, that I agree. I agree with that point.
anti-religious violence in West Bengal, be it against the Sikhs or be it against the Muslims,
Hmm.
of the country. And we are very categoric that left is completely against any kind of rioting or any kind of religious discrimination or any kind of communal kind of agenda that certain political parties have.
Okay. No, no, that the Sikh part, what you are saying is absolutely correct. Now, let's again talk a little bit about personalities, because personalities at the end of the day do matter, I think. And I'll give you and a small anecdote. This friend of mine, a senior IS officer, lady officer, and we were talking about Sitaram Yechuri. And she said, Jaggi, I just, I can't take my eyes off this man. He's so good looking. He's such an articulate man. I'm not going to tell you who that officer was. So my point is, yes, Sitaram Yechuri was a very articulate man. He was a very impressive man in a certain way. Even Jyoti Basu was when he was there. Why can't you, the left, have more and more? You are still a young politician, Saira, but at the senior levels, why can't you have leaders like this? People who are telegenic, people who are, they vibe with the Gen Z. That thing is completely absent from the left ecosystem. What is stopping? Is there a problem of what is called geriatry in the left, where the older people just don't allow the younger people to come to the top?
I think that is there in every political party. You look at the Congress, I mean, beyond probably, the Gandhis or anybody else, I think nobody is really coming to the fore. And regarding the geriatric thing, I agree that's been a problem. It has been an issue. But if you look at the last couple of elections, whether it was Assembly or whether it was Lok Sabha, the left has really tried to, give tickets to young, fresh faces who didn't have previous experience in standing for elections. For example, even nominating a person for me for a prestigious Lok Sabha seat last year from Kolkata South, I think that is a very big step. A, being a minority, being a left progressive, and not being a stereotypical, communist, they still kind of nominate a name, and I think that is what is changing in the left. They are turning things around, and we need to see the turnaround electorally, not just in
Yeah,
the grassroots level, or what you call mass mobilization of the farmers or of the students or at rallies and certain things like that. We want to see it at the ballot box as well, and that is where the challenge lies, and that is what people need to work at, and this is what we need to work at, and make India a robust, strong, democratic country. And I think the voice of the opposition is very important, and I think left has played a very, very pertinent, what you call, point there, where it talks about corrosion of rights, be it judiciary, be it executive, whether it is legislative. Left has been very vocal, and Sitaram Yechuri did a brilliant job. He was
absolutely. Yeah.
taking the these guys on task, be it in the Rajya Sabha, be it in any other, be it in streets, be it on streets, be it any other podcast or any other interview, he was really asking the masters some very tough questions. So we really miss him, considering that he played such an important role in, inspiring the youth of the country to be this articulate,
But what I've heard
the
is that
voice
even
of.
he was fighting his own battles with the geriatric setup within the CPIM. I don't know how far that is true, or you can tell me, but that also is, even a man of his stature and his kind of prominence.
He is missed because he was one of those fiery leaders, and he went away at such a crucial time that we really feel his loss. And
Yeah.
hope we get to see people like now. We have people like Mr. M.A. Baby, we have Mohammed Salim, who was the General Secretary of West Bengal. And M.A. Baby, Mr. M.A. Baby is right now kind of is at the helm of affairs with the party. And I hope we see some new policies and new change
Okay.
that would bring about a
That
turnaround.
would. One more question on politics, and then I wanted to ask you one or two concluding questions on personal space also, because I think that's also very, very important.
Sure, sure.
Why is it that the left sometimes works in Kerala, but it is not at all working in West Bengal? What is the big, big reason according to you?
The left is pretty much working in West Bengal. I mean, my husband, Dr. Fuad Halim, was in, Kolkata North, couple of in North Bengal. He was taking care of a medical camp, and providing medicine and medical care to the flood affected victims. So the point is that left doesn't believe in self glorification or any party becoming or any leader becoming larger than the moment or larger than the party. And largely a lot of work goes unnoticed because they don't play it up, they don't highlight that work. And I think we need to do that. We need to start doing
No,
that
I'm talking of
because
electoral success. I'm
until
talking of
you don't
electoral
talk about
success,
the work
Saira. In terms of electoral success.
electorally, see what has happened is it is facing an anti-incumbency. I agree with you because left has a history that they're going to vote in a party for good 5 terms,
Mhm.
and then they kind of vote for another party to see, like, let's see what Mamta Banerjee is all about. But the last nearly 15 years that we've seen, the educational system being corroded. We've seen the what do you call the campuses being kind of hijacked. You look at the certain rape cases, which is RG or the recent one that happened Durgapur 2 days ago,
Mhm.
or be it the teacher recruitment scam. We've seen how 26,000 people lost a job. The education minister is sitting and rotting in jail. So
Mhm.
yes, there is blatant corruption right now in West Bengal, mainly large to the excesses of the current regime. And the people decided to give Mamta Banerjee a chance, and it will take some time for the turnaround to happen because the previous lot that wasn't left, unfortunately, a lot of these people who were working have made a move to the Trinamool Congress. And once we get a couple of seats in West Bengal, the turnaround is bound to happen. The idea is just to win, a few seats electorally.
So,
And
is it true
like I
that
said,
the left village cadres have actually crossed over completely to the TMC side? Is that true? What they say?
not completely to that side. They were not traditionally leftist. They were opportunists, I would say. The people who have moved
Okay.
over were opportunists because they felt they would curry favor the government, they'll get some kind of things in return and all that. So that lot is gone. So which is a fantastic thing. It's good that that lot has got filtered out because there's a saying that they didn't have any political ideology, so they shifted.
They
The
should.
ones who believed in the left, the ones who are strictly leftists, have stayed with the party irrespective of the electoral setbacks. And I would say kudos to them because they stood by the principles and the ground and they didn't kind of shift parties.
Sarah, if nothing else from our conversation, at least some kind of a blueprint is emerging of what younger leaders like you have in mind. So, now talk to us a little bit about your personal journey. You have stood for elections twice from Baliganj, if I'm not mistaken, correct?
No, no, no. I stood once from Baliganj. This is 2022. So I
Before that,
managed
from another
to infiltrate.
constituency, yeah. From Havra or from where?
No, no. I stood from Baliganj in
Oh,
2022,
okay.
which was a
Okay.
bipole. And I
Right.
stood last year from Lok Sabha.
Right.
So I increased the vote share of the left from 5% when it was 5% in 2021. And I increased it to more than 30% within a year to
Wow.
2022. And majority of the national media covered that election because
Yes.
considering today's times, I defeated the BJP and the Congress and with an overwhelming margin and came very close to winning the election. It's just that the party is not in power. So, of course, my booths were captured. And the media did cover it that morally I did win the election because it was not a small task to just kind of increase the margin by more than 30% within 1 year. But I managed to do that. Me and my comrades managed to do that. Last year was again an overwhelming election because this is not just one constituency. Here there's seven constituencies, and I'm fighting from Mamta Banerjee's hot seat, which is Kolkata South. So obviously the system kind of is with the government in power. They support the system in power. So, as a woman, and secondly, whether people like it or not, I do come from the minority community. That becomes like a double whammy. So they would be trolls from both the sides of this fence, like the ultra right from both sides, whether it is any religion, would not
Hmm.
like to see a face like mine, which is progressive and
Right.
which is very not traditional, but a progressive voice in politics.
So it's been, to sum it up, a kind of a tough journey. It's not so simple, especially in a very politically volatile state like Bengal.
Yes.
Somebody like you in one of those, which is, it's a constituency which is not in the back of the beyond. It's right there in the limelight. It can't be an easy thing. Correct?
Kolkata South, yes, yes. So
Okay.
my election was a highly watched election because last year I was not only the left candidate, I was the India Alliance candidate. That
Right.
means I was nominated by the Left Front, CPM, and supported by the Congress. The left did not put up a candidate against me in Kolkata South last year. So
Right.
it was a highly watched election and very prestigious, most watched on
No, no, I
television
know, I know.
because
Yeah, I remember
It
that.
is
Yeah.
Mamta's hot seat, and to
Yes.
fight from her kind of citadel where you are being stopped or kind of stalled from election campaigns from certain areas like Kali Ghat and all that. Being
Hmm.
a woman, I faced the wrath of like the high and mighty last year,
And
and
you're
I
determined to
faced
carry on with the good fight, the political
I
fight.
think you have to be politically relevant, and it's not always you need to stay relevant by fighting electorally. You can remain relevant by different ways. You need to kind of reinventing yourself as you fight the good fight. I think that's all I can say.
And in conclusion, just very briefly, just tell us a little bit about how Dr. Halim, your husband, supports you, how your dad, war hero, everybody knows about him, your brothers, they all support you in this. How does the family get together? They kind of pack up Saira that she has to go places.
See, of course, I mean, the moral support is always there, but when you're alone in the battlefield, you're alone in the battlefield. So my husband during the election, he did not come for a lot of the campaigns because he did not want me to be in the shadows of, say,
Okay.
a Dr. Fuad Halim, that I'm his wife and all that.
Interesting.
So he
Yeah.
clearly stayed out of my campaign because he wanted me to kind of completely be there in the throes of the election process. Even in writing my book, though he's a very, very relevant left leader and he has his
Hmm.
he's very seminal and all that, but there was very less inputs for him regarding the books. He probably just advised me on, like you can probably look up this and look up that, but the entire writing and research and everything was mine. So
Right.
they play a huge role as far as moral support is concerned, whether it's my father, General Shah, Lieutenant General Zamiruddin Shah, or my brother, Major Muhammad Ali Shah, and my husband, Dr. Fuad Halim. But end of the day, as a woman who is politically active, it's your journey and
Sure,
it's
Charlie.
completely your struggles and your endeavors that kind of sees you through the day.
Absolutely. Saira Shah Halim, for talking to us about your personal journey, about the fortunes of the left or the revival of the fortunes of the left with a new kind of a left emerging, especially with younger people like you. Thank you so much for being on the podcast today. Lovely to have you, and we hope to get more and more and see you being more and more successful in the political arena as we go forward. Thank you so
Thank you
much,
so much,
Saira.
Jay. It was a pleasure being with you on this podcast. Thank you so much. Thanks to
Thank
all
you,
the viewers.
thank you, thank you so much. Yeah.